All right, my name is Bruce Gardner. I'm from Denver, Colorado. Denver, Colorado has been in a raging seller's market for 3 years. And marijuana is also legal. I don't think the two things are connected. And I didn't bring any, just in case you wanted to ask me. I didn't bring any. In case you're wondering about that, just to pass that along, it actually hasn't been a bad thing. So people ask me all the time, what's it like when marijuana is legal? And nothing really changed. The people that are going to smoke marijuana are going to smoke marijuana, right? And the ones that aren't. So it really hasn't changed much. But we have a lot to talk about. Thriving in a seller's market is an amazing thing. How many of you are in a seller's market right now? You're sure of it. And how many of you think you're getting into it pretty quick? All right, so what we're going to do today is we're going to go through a bunch of different ideas. And I want to share some of the things that we've been doing in Denver, some of the things that our better agents have been working with, some of the approaches that they've used. And you guys get to decide what you want to take out of here and use. Is that fair? All right. Now, one thing I will promise you is that if you want this presentation, I will give you a link to the presentation. There's a little blue bag that sits over here in the front. Just put your card in the bag. I'll send you a link to the presentation so you have it all. And there is a handout by the back door. If you did not pick one up, there are some by the back door, and you can use that. So is that fair? You guys okay with that? All right. So are we dealing with change? When our market changes from a kind of a buyer's market or a down market into a seller's market, is that going to cause change in our reality? Of course it is. And one of the things that it's really important to realize about change is that when we make this kind of change, it really is more of a massive change. And one of the things that you can realize about massive change when it occurs, whether it occurs in a real estate market or in a society in general, and I'm talking about technology, whenever we're dealing with massive changes, there are always two things that happen. Always. Number one, some people get hurt. Now, why do they get hurt? Because in the face of massive change, they what? They don't change. So it's the classic case of who moved my cheese. So we have to adapt. But also in a market or in a society where things really change, some people get hurt, some people do really well. Why? What's the difference? They adapt, they find the opportunities that exist, and they look and they analyze at what the new reality is, and they look for the opportunities that are there. So there are opportunities that we can really maximize in a seller's market. It's just figuring out what those are. So we might have to think a little differently about what our business is about. In fact, we may have to act a little differently. And we may have to work with some new ideas. I think we all realize that, but it's really figuring out what those are. Now, as we go through the ideas that I want to share with you, one of the things that I understand is that your mileage may vary. Here's why. Some of the things that I'll talk about you're not going to be able to use in your market because you're not able to write your own contracts, or you're dealing with some other requirements or limitations that are different from one market to the next. So you guys are going to pick out what you want to use or what you can use. And I'm aware that everybody's market is a little bit different. But I want to share with you as many ideas as I can and let you guys pick. Is that fair? All right, I'm going to do everything I can to get you out of here by 3 o'clock. All right, let's define a seller's market. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the leading indicators to watch. What sort of things can we watch to tell where the market is going to go next? Some buy-side challenges and solutions, some list-side challenges and solutions, some different things that we can work on there. And we want to understand the risks of multiple offers. There are certain risks that are built into dealing with multiple offers. In the Denver market earlier this year, in the springtime, it was not uncommon to get 10 or 15 offers on a property from Saturday or Friday till Monday. So is that an unusual circumstance? How do we act as a real estate professional when we have to deal with multiple offers? What's the right way to do this? How do we market the listing in order to maximize our opportunity to capture new clients? If you know the market, if the listing is going to sell right away, what can you do to actually maximize that and capture new clients based on that activity? Find homes that are not in the MLS. So if you're working with buyers, one of the big challenges in this market is that there are no homes to look at. So where do we go outside of the MLS to find inventory that we can start to find for the buyers that we're working with under maybe a buyer agency? And then dealing with the reluctant seller. Our circumstance in Denver is that we have sellers that don't want to put their house on the market. They'd love to sell it, but they're afraid of something. What are they afraid of? Yeah, being homeless, right? Finding a replacement house. And then how to protect your fee. What happens often in a seller's market is that you start to see competitors come into the market that have a different business plan than we do, or maybe it's a new evolved thing that comes into this kind of market. So how do we protect our fee in that sort of environment? How do we deal with that? So I'm going to share a lot of ideas on that. So what is a seller's market? First of all, it's low inventory. You should watch your inventory numbers, and when they start to come down, you're going to start to see the dynamic of a seller's market. And you have a higher absorption rate. We're going to talk about that. Low days on market, rising prices are typically a trailing indicator of a seller's market. Prices start to rise as the competition for the properties goes up. You do have competitive bidding, and you have appraisal challenges. You know, suddenly the comps don't support the market value, right? How do we deal with that? And you get buyers that are completely priced out of the market. So one of the challenges that we have is that many of us are infected with the helper gene, and we want to help as many people as we can. And in this market, some people are not able to buy. And it's hard to deal with that. So let's talk about the absorption rate. If you're not familiar with this, this is the percentage of available homes that sell in a market segment in a month. This will convert to days on market. So it tells us how many days on market is the average. And tracking this will reveal trends. So a simple way to look at this looks like this. If there were 5 sales in the market last month and there are 50 homes on the market, what's the percentage of absorption? What percentage? 10%. How many months does it take to sell the 50 when they're selling at 5 per month? 10 months. So is that a buyer's or seller's market? Buyer's market. So if we do it differently, now we have 25 sales in the last 30 days. We have 50 homes on the market. What percentage of the available homes sold in the last 30 days? 50%, right? And days on market? 60 days. 2 months of inventory. Buyers or sellers? Sellers. So when you track this number, what you're going to be able to see is actually what's going on in the market. Now, one of the great things about this number is that if you track it every month in the markets that you serve most often, you will see the market change in real time. And that's one of the really powerful things about this little piece of data, is that it will tell you what's going on in the market right now. Not only that, it gives you a really good answer to the question, how's the market? Because you can say the absorption rate has improved from 25% of the market last year to 60% of the market every month this year. And you sound like you really know what you're talking about. And probably the person that you're talking to doesn't know what absorption rate is. So you just sound smart. All right, leading indicators. Interest rates. Want to watch the interest rates? The unemployment rate. So nationally, that's obviously dropped. But what is it locally? What is it in your significant market area? Are you dealing with population changes? Are you seeing your population grow or shrink? And what's your listing inventory level? That is probably one of the best indicators of a changing market, is the listing inventory level. And then average rents. One of the factors that we're dealing with in the Denver market is that rents have gone up so fast that it's pushing buyers into the market to buy properties, which is creating demand on the low-end properties, and it's driving the prices up. So it's this perpetuating linked set of factors. So if you watch these sorts of issues here, this will tell you, as the market continues to evolve, where are we going to flatten out? And when are we going to start to drop? If your inventory starts to rise, we're probably sliding into a buyer's market. Does that make sense? So keep your eye on some of these factors. So what are the challenges on the buy side? Finding properties to show and getting offers accepted. You're dealing with a very unique set of circumstances in a seller's market, multiple offers, highest and best requests. So you'll submit an offer and you'll get a message back from the listing broker that says, you know, we've received multiple offers, submit your highest and best. And then the last one is you're dealing with all cash buyers. So if your buyer is dealing with a loan, even if they're pre-qualified or pre-approved or whatever, if they're competing with all cash buyers, it's a real challenge to get that accepted. And then the other one is the appraisals come in low, which we mentioned. So what I think is really, really critical if you're going to be in a seller's market is having a very solid buyer's consultation with your buyer prospects. Sit down with them and explain what the realities of the market are. They don't understand the market on the level that we do, and they also know that we're in sales, so they mistrust what we're saying, right? They think we're telling them this just to get them to act quickly so they can get a sale that's very quick. That's not really the issue. You're going to want to give them market stats for the market range that they're going to operate in. Give them the reality of what's going on in the space that they're going to work in, and show them the velocity. In other words, show them how fast properties sell. Here's 10 properties that just sold, the 10 most recent sales in the market space that you're going to be looking at. This one sold in a day, 4 days, 7 days, 12 days. Show them the velocity. So don't just tell them, show them. It's a really powerful thing to do. And then talk about the importance of pre-approval. Is there a difference between pre-qualification and pre-approval? Absolutely. So our lenders in this kind of market need to be working with us to get our buyers pre-approved so that they're ready to act and that their credit has been run through underwriting or some other process where they're going to be able to move forward without having to worry about that hurdle. And then you have to talk to them about overbidding. Have to talk to them about overbidding. If you have 7 offers on the property, are we going to have overbidding? Sure. So you're going to have to prepare them for that reality. If you don't have a market consultation like this with your buyers, what will happen is there's a learning curve where they have to learn what the market is, and they have to lose a house or 2 or 3 or 4 before they're ready to really be active and be successful in that market and really bid for a property that they can get. We have to deal with inspections and appraisals differently. So tell them that the inspections are harder to negotiate in a seller's market than they are in a buyer's market. You're not going to get away with asking for as much. And it's, what are we going to do about the difference between the value of the contract and what the appraisal is? Are they prepared to pay that difference in cash? That becomes an important consideration. That may end up being a clause in your offer. So we're dealing with situations where buyers really have to do things that they don't really want to do in order to successfully get a property. And should the parents be involved? Right? If you're dealing with a younger couple, are the parents involved anyway? So if they have somebody that's significantly acting as a consultant or a coach or whatever you want to call it, maybe you offer to have them involved and sit down with a conversation so that they're all part of this knowledge base that you're building. Create a special report. What if you wrote a little report about buying in a seller's market? And you could talk about the challenges and how to assess the velocity and the different strategies for success. This can be a real marketing tool, but it also can set you apart as an expert, as somebody that really is knowledgeable about how to work with buyers in a challenged market like this. So how would you write this report? Here's an idea. This is what real estate agents have done forever. Go to Google and Google, buying in a seller's market, and you'll come up with all kinds of different information. And then do what we've done forever. Just steal it. We do it anyway. We might as well, right? Acknowledge it. But write a special report that actually outlines what this is like in your specific market dealing with buyers. And this becomes a valuable tool that you can give them, part of the education process. Offer strategies, pre-approved or pre-qualified. I think it's important, really important, in a seller's market that your buyers are completely pre-approved as far down the process as they can be. In other words, have the lender get the supporting documentation, have them run it through their underwriting department or do the desktop underwriting, whatever needs to be done to get to that level. It's really a critical aspect. And maybe they need to work with a higher down payment. Maybe they need to be creative about where they come up with cash in order to make the down payment. Can they borrow money from an IRA? That may be one of the strategies you have to do, or get gift funds from a family member. And then we know the difference between conventional FHA and VA. Which one is stronger in your market? Which one is more appealing when your listing agent gets the offer from your buyer? See if you can structure that the best way you can. And then the last one is all cash. Are they in a position where they can work with all cash and then refinance the property after they buy it? We have to be creative because your buyers are going to be competing with strong buyers in a market like this. In Denver, one of the things that's happened, and it's kind of a funny byproduct of the marijuana thing, is that the marijuana industry can't put their money in the bank. The banks won't take it, so what do they do with it? They're buying real estate. All right, offer process. If you get a brand new listing that looks really appealing, I would contact the listing agent as soon as possible. I would call or text them, whatever you need to do before showing. Let's make sure the property is not already sold, that the listing broker hasn't sold it to somebody that's already in their pocket, right? But let's build a relationship with this listing broker right from the beginning so we're in a position to really keep our people in the game. Write a clean offer. In other words, write as simple an offer and direct an offer as you can. Don't muddy it up with a lot of requests for inclusions or other stuff. Write that clean offer. And then remove contingencies. You're going to be in a position where you're going to be wondering if you should remove the inspection or the appraisal contingency. Now that's a decision you have to make. I think it's problematic to remove the inspection contingency completely, but if we remember back to the REO days, what was the inspection clause like on a bank-owned property? You have the right to inspect and opt out, but you don't really get to ask for anything. We may have to deal with that in a seller's market with a regular buyer. And should we use an escalation clause? So an example of an escalation clause looks like this. Buyer agrees to pay X dollars over any other bona fide offer up to the maximum purchase price not to exceed blank. So that would be their maximum offer. Seller agrees to provide buyer with a copy of the highest competing offer with names redacted for privacy within 24 hours. You may have to work with whatever is going to work in your marketplace, and you may want to consult with your broker on how to do this. But this may be the one way you can get this done. Keep in mind, guys, again, this is all going to be on the presentation. If you just want to get the presentation, we'll do that afterwards. And then the overbidding issue. One of the challenges we have here is this becomes an emotional hang-up for some of the buyers that we work with. In other words, they want to feel like they get a good deal, and overbidding on a property really doesn't feel like they're doing that. They feel like they're being taken advantage of. So one of the questions is, how do we deal with that issue when we're dealing with a buyer? How do we put them in a position to really win the day if they are going to have to overbid for a property? If you look at a market space that they're working in and all of the properties are going for above list price, then they're going to have to overbid in order to get the property. How do you manage that little bit of conversation with that buyer client? It's emotional. And I think the issue, the way that we overcome this, is to talk about timing. It's not about the price, it's about the timing. It's not about if they get in, it's about when. When do you get in? If you have a market that's got continually escalating prices, when you get in starts to matter. And I use the feel, felt, found approach. So if you haven't heard this little dialogue before, this may be handy for you guys. So I understand how you feel. Many of the buyers I've been working with have felt the same way. But for many of them, after they look at the rates of appreciation in the market, they realize that whatever they overpay when they buy will be absorbed quickly. They will be building equity within a short time of their purchase. We have to really talk to them about the ultimate goal, not really about how it feels right now. They have found that it makes sense to own a property in an appreciating market so that they can build equity they want for their future. So for them, what's more important is that they get in sooner rather than later, and the actual purchase price is not as important as owning an appreciating asset. Does that give you a different perspective? So this becomes a new skill that we have to build in order to have this conversation in a productive way with the buyer client that's dealing with this kind of reality. How much should we offer? Now, the challenge here for us is that if we tell them what to do and they don't get the house, who do they blame? Us. So one of the things I've learned how to do is called the consultant's formula. So whenever we deal with a client who needs to make a decision, this kind of activates this formula for me, and it sounds like this. Whenever my client needs to make a decision, I want to give them their options and the consequences of each one of those choices, and then let them pick. So I share the information I have, but I let them decide. And once you stay in that role, you'll be a consultant. When you get into the box where you tell them what to do, you're in sales. Does that make sense? So we stay out of the box where we make the decision, we're going to be a consultant. So I want to give them their options. What are the options that they have available to them at this particular point, and what are the consequences? And let them decide. And you may give your opinion. Based on what I'm seeing happen in the market, it wouldn't surprise me if the highest offer on this property was more than blank. We have to find creative ways to really tell them and give them some guidance as to what to do, but still let them decide. Now, one of the other things you can do is simply ask this: how much do you like the property? Or even this question: if you lose this property, is that okay? So what will happen here is if you have a husband and wife and he wants to negotiate and she loves the house, has anyone ever been in that situation? And you ask this question: if you lose this property, is that okay? She's going to turn and look at him. And every man in the world can interpret that look, can we not? So what you're doing by asking the right question is you're activating a dialogue between the two of them so they will sort it out themselves. and then they will tell you what to do. But you activate that dialogue between them by asking a question like that. All right, the buyer love letter. Having the buyer write a letter to the seller in legible handwriting can be a good idea. Why they want the house, why they love the house, their kids, the neighborhood, all of these emotional triggers and pull things that we can add to the offer. And why does this have an impact? Do you think sellers sometimes care who buys their house? So we know this is an emotional process. This letter can actually create that emotional connection. That seller may pick your offer even though it's not the highest one, simply because the letter really spoke to them. So is this one of the options that we have in our toolbox? It is. Now, I don't recommend you use a form letter, right? Dear blank, and then write. So let's make it personal. Let's do something that's really emotional. Submit it with the offer, and should you list it as an attachment? Is that a creative idea? So another idea to work with. Let me have the backup contract. Now we're getting into, again, an area where I don't know if this is going to work in your particular market space, but if you have a scenario where you have multiple offers and the buyer loves the house and the initial offer process has multiple offers and they don't get the house, they're beat out by a better offer, but they still love the house, this may be an option that actually helps them get it. And the way this will work is you actually contact the listing agent regarding the terms of a backup offer. What would it take? Can we submit an offer as a backup? And you get the second offer, your buyer client's offer, accepted as an offer to purchase on the house, subject to the defeat of the first. So what that essentially means is that if that first contract was to fail, your buyer is then under contract. The other option is to wait and see if it actually goes through, and then if it doesn't go through, then submit another offer, but then you're kind of back in that auction process. So if we want to avoid that, this is a great way to actually avoid that. Submit a new offer as a backup and create dates that are after NOE-TFP if you can do this. So what does that mean? Notice of elevation to first position. So all the dates in your contract would be 10 days after NOE-EFT. So in other words, after the defeat of the first accepted contract, then these dates would start. So we don't have to go back and redo the dates. Sounds like this. Seller is currently obligated to sell a property by contract dated blank, the first contract. Seller's obligation to close this contract is contingent upon the buyer under the first contract acknowledging the first contract's termination in writing. Seller would notify the buyer immediately. Upon termination, seller would then be obligated to sell the property under this contract. So in other words, your contract is on the property and immediately elevates to first position once the first one is defeated. Seller reserves the right to extend any deadlines or otherwise modify the first contract without affecting this contingency, and the buyer has the right to terminate under this paragraph and section whatever applies in your contract at any time prior to receiving notice. So what you get here is an option on this property. But if your buyer continues to look, which is what you probably should be doing, and they find another property they can get under contract on, they can withdraw this one by providing notice. Does everybody see what we're doing here? So this becomes a new sort of approach and a new set of skills that we have to deal with in this specific situation. Could you have 3 or 4 of these accepted as backups? You could, and that may be what it takes to get a property for your buyer. So in Denver, when you're dealing with buyers that are competing every time they go after a house, they're competing against 7, 10, 12, 15 other offers, you have to be creative in order to end up with a property. Now, what do we deal with if it's not in the MLS? So you're working with a buyer, you're searching the MLS diligently, and it's just not there. Now what do we do? Because we're going to be in a position where we need to get creative. So what do we do? Identify what they want. You probably already have the criteria pretty clear in your head. Figure out what it is that they're looking for, and then create a marketing campaign to actually find that house. I'm going to give you some creative ideas to work with here. This is a marketing company that's actually here at the convention. Quantum Digital. Is anybody familiar with these guys? They do some really cool stuff. They have a QCARDS app and they have MAPMAIL. So let's talk about QCARDS first. The QCARDS app, you go to quantumdigital.com and you create an account. So you're going to put in all your information. You're going to put in your contact information, your logo, your picture, all that sort of stuff. That's going to be in there. And then you're going to download the iOS app from the App Store, and it's the QCARDS app. Once you do that, you can sign into the app and put in your account information. And now the printing company, Quantum Digital, knows that the app on your phone belongs to your account. Does everyone see what we just did? Okay. Then you can use the app to take a picture and create a postcard right on your phone and mail it from your phone. And it goes out first class at 63 cents a piece. Now let me give you an idea. You're working with a buyer and you can't find them a house, and they want to live in a neighborhood called Shady Acres. And there's no houses on the market in Shady Acres. So one day you're out working with them and there's no houses. You look at houses and they still want to live in Shady Acres. So you take them over to Shady Acres and you get them out of your car and you take them over to the sign that says, "Welcome to Shady Acres," and you stand them up next to the sign to take a picture of the buyer and the sign. Then right on the app you can flip it over and write a message on the back of the card that says, "Dear homeowner, meet Bill and Mary. Bill and Mary want to live in your neighborhood. There's no house to buy. If you're thinking about selling, call me. We may be able to put this deal together." Send. You pick out how many you want to send in the area that you're in. Send. So what happens? Well, Bill and Mary think you're amazing. Right? This is the story they can't stop telling their friends. It may get you more clients. And you may get some contact from people that are actually thinking about selling. Right? And you put a deal together, or you end up in a conversation that turns into a listing. Is that cool technology for us? It's amazing. They also have another one called MAPMAIL. Now this one you do online, and here's what this is. This is an extraordinary marriage of technology, and here's what it does. It's a standard postcard mailing system that sends out postcards, but they've married it to a demographics engine. So here's what you can do with this tool. You zoom in on a piece of the earth that you want to market to, and then you create this shape by pulling and dropping these markers. So any shape you want. And then you go into a demographics engine and you say this: I want to mail to all the homeowners in that shape that make more than $100,000 a year, are married, have kids, and have lived there for more than 10 years. Now, could you target market with that kind of tool? Absolutely. This is an amazing piece of technology for us. In the old days, we would have to go to a postcard mailing system company and bring a list with us that we got from a demographics company and merge them together and make it all go. These guys do it all in one tool. It's a perfect technology for our industry. So if you have more questions about this, see them at the show. They're on the show floor. I don't remember the booth number, but I saw them there yesterday. And I just want you to know I don't have stock in this. All right, MAPMAIL for sellers, anyone who bought right before the downturn. Is that a good idea? If your market went through a downturn, you had people that really got locked into place. In other words, their property value dropped and they couldn't sell, or even if they wanted to, and now they're waiting for the property values to come back. This is a great way to target them. Or homeowners that have owned for more than 10, 15, or 20 years. Let's target market specific demographics with a specific message that could turn into listing opportunities. And this is a really easy tool to do that with. And let's talk about gray market listings. Gray market listings. What does that mean? Well, if we have extremely low inventory, sellers are hesitant or not willing to list their property. So it may not be in the MLS. FSBO'S are now part of the inventory. Would you guys agree? So in a raging seller's market, is a for sale by owner actually part of the actual inventory? It is. It becomes a new part of our inventory. And we may want to check out Zillow's gray market listings. How many of you are raving fans of Zillow? How many of you are not? Okay, so would it be okay if you got free leads from Zillow? Free. Would that be good? Okay. So here's how this works. When you go to Zillow, you go over here to Homes. When you click on that, you see a drop-down menu of what's available that you can search on. So the for sale ones are coming from the MLS. So here's the ones by agent. Here's by owner, new construction. Look at all this. Foreclosures coming soon, foreclosed homes, pre-foreclosure, make me move. Now when you investigate this, this is what you discover about what's in this database. The foreclosed homes have been taken back by a bank. The pre-foreclosure homes are the ones where the foreclosure process has been started. They identify the homes in your market where the foreclosure process has started, and you don't have to pay for that information. And these ones down here, make me move, are homeowners that have set a price for their home that says, if we can get this price, we'll sell. Are those leads? Those are potential sellers that you could talk to. Every one of them is either in a position where they're going to be forced to sell, or they would like to sell and they really haven't put their house on the market. And the same thing with the for sale by owners. Exact same thing. So we need to start thinking creatively about where do we find a house. And this may be one of the ways that we can do that. And Zillow has done us a great favor and put them all in the same place for us for free. So when you see them on the floor down there, just shake their hand and walk away. It's okay. All right, if you're going to deal with a for sale by owner, I would call and verify the availability, and I would also identify yourself as an agent and your company. And then I would ask them if they were willing to pay a co-op. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, the reason I called is that your house is for sale by owner. I saw it on Zillow, and I was curious, are you willing to pay a fee if I bring you a buyer? Good question. All right, the next thing you might ask, and this turns out to be important, is what they had in mind. Because what you normally expect may not be what they're offering. Does that make sense? So, well, what did you have in mind? Well, we thought we'd pay an agent $100. You might want to know that. Okay? And then I have a buyer who's interested in your home. Can we arrange a viewing? Or you might say this if you're just prospecting for leads through the FSBO process on Zillow. Can I come by and see your house? I don't have a buyer right now, but can I come by and see it? And they might say, well, why would you want to see it? And my answer would be, well, if your home is for sale by you, it's actually part of the inventory as far as I'm concerned. The more I know about it, the better chance I'm going to be to actually bring you a buyer. So if I can just come by and view your house, spend a couple minutes with you taking a walkthrough, then I'll know more about it. I'll know if I have a match. And then I may be able to get your house sold. Is that a good approach? Yeah, let's take advantage of that. And then send a confirmation. If you have a buyer that would actually be interested in their house, confirm by email they have an offer of cooperation and compensation. Make that proactive effort to them. Per our conversation, seller of the property agrees to pay a success fee to selling company equal to X, the final sales price for successful closing of the sale of seller's property by a buyer represented. Write this up and just send an email. Let's get an affirmation back from the seller. Now, is this really a bindable contract? Is this a listing agreement? Probably not. But if they have been willing to agree to this by email, does it feel like a commitment to them? At least we're on the path to putting this together. And then you may want to include a commission clause in your contract, again, if you're allowed to insert clauses into your contract that really reaffirms and commits them to paying a success fee. So what do we need to do with thriving with buyers? Set the expectation. Really prepare for the competition. Have that consultation. I think spending more time up front with your buyers in a really strong seller's market is really going to position you for success. Use escalation clauses and backup offers. Find a willing seller and check your gray market listings. Now, if you're really in a raging seller's market, this is the question I still want to ask. Should you stop working with buyers? Here's why. They're complete time sucks. Aren't they? All right, here's the second question. If you stopped working with buyers and you spent all of that time prospecting for sellers, instead, what would happen? You'd have more listings that would sell because of the raging seller's market. You'd probably make more money. What if you hired some buyers on a split, buyer agents on splits? What if you had somebody under you to actually do the showing of the properties? I just want you to think creatively. I mean, this is how you really maximize the opportunity in a seller's market, because the opportunity in a seller's market is not on the buy side. It's on the listing side. Because every listing you get in a seller's market that's priced reasonably well, that's in a reasonably good condition, that's in one of the neighborhoods that are attractive, is going to sell and you're going to get paid. So it's just a question I want to ask. Should you just manage the process? It's a thought. All right, let's talk about sellers. We have challenges on this side of the equation too. What are they? They're reluctant to list. They don't want to be homeless. I think that's totally normal. They're dealing with multiple offer situations, which, by the way, for us is actually problematic. We're going to talk about some of the issues that are buried in the multiple offer situation that we have to deal with. You have contract terminations. One of the things that we see in Denver is that you'll have a buyer that competes to get a property, gets it under contract, and 3 or 4 days later opts out. So what happened? They had buyer's remorse. They felt like they overpaid. And we're seeing, opt-out rates anywhere from 10 to 30% are not unusual. So what you're seeing is that many of these properties really need to be sold twice, right? It's a dual process. And then you have appraisal issues and lender issues. And then the other issue that starts to pop up, greedy sellers. Has anyone run across somebody that was greedy, or is it just me, right? We have to learn new skills. Your skill set dealing with sellers in a seller's market is different than it is dealing with sellers in a buyer's market. And you may have to adjust your attitude. You're going to have to get a little bit more focused. I love that picture. All right, seller's market consultation. Now again, we need to spend a little more time explaining to the seller what is this going to be like to work with selling their property in a seller's market and overcoming their objections. The reluctant seller, the seller protection program, which we're going to talk about, and the flat fee competitor and negotiating your fee. So what do we do about setting the expectation? I think this consultation, again, is going to be absolutely critical to get through this process. We have to talk about the market dynamics, the auction of their home. If you put a house on the market in the seller's market and you know you're going to get multiple offers, this literally is an auction. You see the dynamic that's at work there? So this is going to be different. What do we do for marketing? How do we deal with overbidding in the appraisal? How do we manage the appraisal process? And fallout from buyer's remorse and accepting buyer contracts, backup contracts. So we have to prepare them for the different realities that we're going to be dealing with. This is not a situation where we put it on the market and we wait, and 3 or 4 weeks later we get an offer that we're able to negotiate, get under contract, that we work through to closing. It's not like that anymore. You're really dealing with an auction mentality. They really have a fear of being homeless. When you sit down with them, they are afraid. Once they become aware of what the market is like and they know how quickly properties sell, they're literally afraid that they're going to be living in their car. So we're going to have to deal with that. And we want to present them with options. Sell and rent, which is not going to be very appealing to them, or maybe there's a seller protection program that you can create. So what does that look like? Seller protection program is a program where you set up a series of clauses into the contract that you negotiate to sell their home that protects them. And what we're looking for is that we want to create contingencies in the contract that will do this. Create a window of time for the seller to find and get a property under contract to be a replacement property, and then also make the sale of their property contingent upon the successful closing of their purchase. Now, these are not clauses that we would normally want to insert into a contract. However, in this market, this may be the only way to get someone who's reluctant to put their house on the market. You have to convince them that you're going to protect their interests and keep them from being homeless. Seller to find and contract for the purchase of an acceptable property or replacement home within X days from the date of this contract. Or this contract is null and void. Seller to notify buyer in writing upon securing a contract for the purchase of that home, and the date the buyer receives such notice will be the notification date. All dates in the contract will be amended to include after ND. So this is similar to the approach that we may have used on a bank-owned property, that all the dates start after you get notice back from the bank that things are moving forward. So we're going to use the same concept in this particular situation when we negotiate the sale price. So when you do something like this, you may want to put in broker remarks in your MLS that you're going to be expecting to have these clauses inserted. And if you're going to get multiple offers, there's an excellent chance that you'll find a buyer that's willing to accept this, because it may be their only way to get a property under contract. Seller successfully close on the purchase in conjunction with the sale of this property, or again, it's null and void. Buyer and seller may agree to amend dates for these contingencies by mutual agreement. So this becomes your seller protection program. And what you're saying is, we're going to protect your interests and we're going to put your house on the market, but you're not going to be obligated to sell it unless you can find the property that you want and get it under contract in a certain number of days, and it closes at the same time that you're selling this property. That will give them the confidence to move forward. Does this become a more difficult process? Yeah, it could be more complicated. It may take more time to get it under contract. But again, this may be the only way to get this property to get listed by someone who's really hesitant. And you may want to check with your broker. Anybody okay with that? Check with your broker. Now, how do we deal with a flat fee competitor? Now, in our market, what's popped up are a couple of companies that are approaching the market and saying, we'll sell your house for X. We'll put it on the market for X. They've even gone so far as to say, we'll only offer to pay buyer agents and transaction brokers that bring a buyer to purchase the property a flat fee too. So instead of what we've normally done with some percentage of the sales price, they're saying it's a flat fee to list the property, it's a flat fee to the buyer broker that brings the buyer. So when you pull this property up in the MLS as a buyer's agent, they're only offering X dollars. So if that has not come to your town, you may see this pop up, because this is one of the things that we see in a seller's market. So how do you compete with this? Well, their whole value proposition is with a flat fee, you're going to net more. Now, is that always true? No, because the sales price really determines what you're going to net. It's not just what the fee is that the broker is going to collect. But really, it's about changing the conversation from the money to the risks. So let me walk you through this. It takes a little while to unfold it, but you're going to like where it goes. I understand your desire to save money. I think we'd all agree that if you're running a company like that, then you have to be working on volume. Have to be working on volume. You ideally want to have transactions that are fast and easy, wouldn't you? So we get a little agreement. The hard ones would present a problem in terms of time and effort and take you away from the fast and easy ones. That makes sense, doesn't it? So we tie that down. So once we have those agreements, then you start telling them about, educating them about the market. In this market, what I've learned is that almost every transaction has one or more difficult issues that we need to deal with. And this is when your agent really makes the most difference. This is where the rubber meets the road. It can mean the difference between a deal that closes and one that doesn't. And most of these challenges occur after the property is under contract. Is that true? Isn't most of the heavy lifting and work that we do after it goes under contract? Because once we put it on, the great thing about real estate is that when you put someone's house under contract as a seller, right? You're the listing agent, they think it's over. Don't they? Don't they often say, hey, thanks a lot, we really appreciate your help? And it hasn't even started. So most of the stuff we deal with, the things that we have to really arm wrestle over, are going to occur after. And what you need to do is inform your seller that this is where your agent really matters. So I think your decision about using a low-cost provider really isn't about the money, because when it really matters, when your deal's on the line and all of your plans are up in the air, the fee that you'll be paying is not what's most important to you. It'll be whether or not your transaction closes, because that can change everything you've planned for. So in this circumstance, when somebody puts their house under contract and then it falls apart and they've contracted to buy another house, or they've set up their move to another part of the country, they have to unwind all of that if this deal won't close. This is when your agent really matters. This is what's really important. So at that moment, you're going to want to have somebody on your side who's going to be there no matter what. Someone who's totally committed to doing what needs to be done to make it happen, and who has the skills and the experience to do it. Because at that moment, when it really counts, Mr. Fast and Easy is going to feel like a risky scheme. So what you're really going to be deciding between is fast and easy or no matter what. If you're willing to roll the dice, it certainly could work out, or it could be disastrous for your family. You want the peace of mind that you've got no matter what on your side, then you have a better choice to make. I want you to know I'm going to be with you no matter what. I'll fight for you and your family no matter what challenges we face as we go through the process. So which do you think is better? Working with fast and easy or no matter what? You guys like this approach? All right, it doesn't work every time. Nothing works every time. Would you agree? But you've got to give them the genuine doubt that what really is going to matter is that in this market, with the challenges that we deal with, what they need is a really committed, experienced professional working with them that wants to get the deal done. And if you're working on a flat fee on a simple, small amount of money, you're just not going to care enough to work hard enough to get that deal done. All right, let's talk about protecting your fee. So you go into a listing appointment and the seller wants you to reduce your fee. Why? Well, it's going to sell right away. You're going to put it in the MLS, it's going to sell. You won't have very much work to do. It'll be easy. Has anyone ever heard this approach coming from a seller, right? What do we say to the seller? Well, it's really about changing the conversation to the complexities of the transaction and the risks to them. What are the complexities? Let's start talking about what sort of risks are involved in a multiple offer situation. So the response might be, I understand how you feel. With this market, it certainly takes less time to get a property under contract, and it does look easy, like it doesn't take much effort. But the reality is much different from that perception. It's actually more work and harder to successfully sell a home in this market, and there are more risks to both you and me. Let me explain. As your broker, when we receive an offer, I have some work to do. I need to review all the offer for all the clauses, inclusions and exclusions, proposed seller paid expenses, and more. I need to talk with the other agent. I need to talk with the lender, see what we're dealing with over there. I have to investigate their financial ability to acquire the financing to complete the transaction. I also have to investigate any and all prior offers that are in place with the buyers that are submitting an offer on ours to make sure that that doesn't affect our contract. And then I have to prepare a net proceeds analysis and assess the financial impact. I have to do that for every offer. When you receive multiple offers, obviously the amount of work multiplies by the number of offers that we receive. But also new issues begin to develop, and there are legal risks to manage. Federal fair housing laws require that neither you or I can discriminate against one or more of the buyers based on a number of factors. This would mean that all offers should be presented in a fair and equitable manner. It's essential to protect you and I from the federal lawsuit for housing discrimination. I assure you that's not something you want to be involved in. It probably also means we should not present offers in a multiple offer situation with names or letters or pictures or videos. Now remember, when we're on the buy side in this situation, we want to submit the letter, is that correct? But on the listing side, does that present an unreasonable risk? Think about it. If you have two similar offers and they both submit letters, and one person is pink and one person is purple, and we pick purple, could this person be upset? That's how you get into trouble. Now think about that situation. Do you think some people somewhere would raise a stink and feel like they were discriminated against? We have to present offers in a multiple offer situation so that they're completely colorblind. It's only on the merits of the offer. Does that take work? You have 15 offers. How much work does this take? Could take you a whole day. Would you agree? Some of the other challenges you might face are contracts that fall out for buyer's remorse or other reasons necessitating the remarketing of your home and another round of multiple offers. And we have appraisal challenges, and managing that is also time-consuming, may involve a renegotiation of your contract terms. So the bottom line is that there's a lot more work and risks and challenges in this market for you and I. Certainly we could go through this process and ignore those risks and take our chances. If you are comfortable assuming that level of risk and exposure, then possibly another agent is a better choice for you. If you want the peace of mind that comes from working with someone who can protect your interests and has the skills and abilities necessary to do that, then I think we'll make a good team, and there's a cost for that. Is it okay to be proud of what you do? You know what? We need to take ownership of the fact that we are professionals. We need to talk about the fact that we have years of experience and that we're committed to the success of our agents and not be ashamed of that. Let's make it a plus. It's not a minus. We're not all beggars. Look, you can pick from somebody that's experienced or not experienced. It makes a difference in how this works. Let's tell that story. If you'd be comfortable working with me on this, let's get started as soon as possible. Does that sound like a good idea to you? Let's move forward. And I think in this market, if you're going to be competing against people that are cutting their commissions, and you're not willing to do that, you have to be proud of what it is that you do, the experience and talents and skills that you bring to the table, and talk about it. You may not get this listing, but you know you're going to do a good job for everybody you do. Is that true? Let's do it. Let's talk about that. All right, multiple offers. Again, you need a good seller consultation. You can create an auction environment. So can you actually use this to your seller's advantage? You could. You have to get seller approval of the plan. So maybe you start thinking in a creative term like this. We're going to list the property in the MLS on Thursday. We're going to have the showing start on Saturday. Does that create a little bit of excitement in the market? It does. So you have the showings already pre-set up. You have your offers need to be in by Monday at noon. Does that give everybody that's in the market as a buyer an opportunity to see the property and submit an offer? So you're not blocking anybody out. And I think if you're truly acting in your seller's best interest, where you want to get them the highest and best value, which is what we're supposed to do, this allows that to occur, but also is in the interest of potential buyers that are out there. Let's give the buyers the same fair shot at getting the property and assessing what they think the value of the property is. Presented Monday evening, is it okay for you to disclose to other buyers what the highest offer is? Is that in the seller's best interest? All right, let's take it apart. You have 5 offers. One is obviously the highest, the other 4 are the lowest or lower. And you get permission from your seller to disclose the highest offer. Property is listed at $280. You have 4 offers that are between $280 and $290 and one that's at $303. If you notify the other 4 buyers that you have an offer at $303, is it possible one of them will exceed $303? Is that in the seller's best interest? It's okay with me if it's all right with them. Let's maximize their sales price. Get permission. Multiple offers, managing the work, your due diligence. You've got to work through the process of evaluating lenders and the other prior offers. If you're getting an offer from a buyer that wants to buy your listing and their house is under contract, is the sale of your property going to be contingent upon that one closing? Of course. So do we need to do the due diligence to check out that particular contract to make sure it's got a high degree of chance of selling? I think so. And we have to deal with the love letters. How are we going to approach the love letter issue? We have the fair housing issues and legal actions. So the best practice, evaluate each offer on its merits. Dollars and cents, dates, financial strength, contingencies, and present without names. So I have agents that consistently will present all the offers to their seller in an Excel spreadsheet. No names, buyer A, B, C, D, E, that's it. Offer price, the dates, inclusions, exclusions, how strong they are, that's all. Does that protect our interests and the interests of the seller? It does. Will it appraise? You need to have a conversation with your seller about if the appraisal comes in low, what do we do? What are we going to do with that situation? Are you willing to lower the price to this contract value or to the appraised value from the contract value? Are you willing to do that? Is the buyer willing and able to pay the difference? We are seeing situations where the buyer is saying, we'll pay whatever difference is between the appraised value and the contract value in cash. We'll make that up at closing. Is that in your seller's best interest? It is, and that's available in a seller's market. Can you counter that with an appraisal clause that deals with that situation for that buyer? Can you say in the counter the buyer agrees, pay the difference in cash? And once they sign it, we have a commitment. Can you make the earnest money hard? Once you go past the inspection, can you make the earnest money committed? So again, with the seller's market, the seller has the upper hand. You're able to negotiate things that you normally wouldn't negotiate in a flat market or a normal market. You have more negotiating power. Backup contracts, yes or no? What are the benefits? Well, there are benefits from the seller side too. If you have a backup contract that's in place, does that give you more negotiation leverage with the first contract as you go through the inspection? Absolutely. So does this work in your seller's interest? Can. It also avoids another auction. Avoids another auction. All right, let's talk about marketing. How do we market for listings? Got some different ideas here. Now, door knocking is not one of those things that everybody loves to do, but in this market it actually can be relatively successful simply because there are people in your market that are waiting to sell and have been waiting to sell because the property value's dropped. And this is a very unique circumstance. So in other words, if your market has gone through a downturn and then it was at the bottom and now it starts to come back up, you have people that were locked in by the downturn. In other words, the house is worth less than they paid or less than they owe or less than they're willing to accept. And while they're seeing the market come back, what are they waiting for? They're waiting to hit a certain price, right? And if you're going to do actual proactive prospecting, you have an actual chance to run into these people. We're going to talk about how to market with the seller protection program, how to run open houses for seller leads. Seller leads. What if we started doing open houses for sellers? the seller invite open house, and how to work with garage sales. Let's talk about some creative things. The market report. So this is my idea of a market report. If you're going to work in a general geographic area, create a market report. So in my idea, this is a single piece of paper. It's 11 by 17. When you fold it in half, you now have 4 panels, 8.5 by 11. So on the cover, you put the name of the report, your contact information. You might include a nice little picture of you that was taken not very long ago. You guys know what I'm talking about, right? How about this century? Is that a good idea? And then on the inside of the report, you have an opportunity to display data about what's going on in the different markets that you have or the different neighborhoods that you work. And the backside can be a little bit more information, and if you fold it in half, you can create a mailing panel. You guys like this idea? Simple. Now here's what I recommend you think about. Publish it quarterly, every 3 months. So the great part about publishing quarterly is that you can do this. You can compare the market stats for the last quarter compared to the same market the year before, and now you can talk about the trend. That's the power of this kind of information. It also turns out that's the kind of information that's really hard for the consumer to find online. Would you agree? And you guys are doing it on a hyper-local level. By the way, if you do want me to send a copy of the presentation to you, I'll send a copy of this, so it gives you some idea on how to work with this. Is that a good idea? All right. So you do that for the area. You talk about your stats. One of the really important things that turns out in the market report is when you write a paragraph or two about where you think it's going. So what that does is it's your ability or your opportunity to really display your market knowledge and talk about the trends and talk about what's going on and display your knowledge and expertise in the area. You should be doing that. And then your market stats, we talked about the back panel. And then you can door knock with this, and this is how we do that. I'm so-and-so with XYZ Realty. I wanted to drop off some real estate information about your neighborhood. Would you consider selling your house if you could get the right price? So what you're going to find there is people say, well, sure, if we could get the right price, we'll sell our house. Well, great. What do you think the price is? Now, think about this. How long are you at this door? 30 seconds, and they've already told you what they would accept to sell their house. Is that direct enough? And all you needed was one piece of paper. And then you might ask them, if you did move, where would you go? What would that tell you? Motivation, right? Is it good to have sellers that are motivated? How many of you like motivated sellers? Right? Let's work with them. And then, can I do some research and get back to you? Now you have a what? You have a lead, a prospect. You have somebody to work with. Let me ask you this question. If you did this 3 hours a week, what would happen? Think about that. 3 hours a week. Would you come across people that were, if they weren't ready to sell now, that were thinking about getting ready to sell? They would have already told you how much they'd be willing to accept. You would know when their time came up. You could stay in contact with them. Would that build you a prospect database that could turn into a lot of listings in a relatively short period of time? And the really unfortunate thing is most of us aren't willing to do this. And yet, this is how you uncover business. One of the fascinating facts of the NAR report that they do on buyers and sellers, and I love this stat. I don't actually like it, but I love reading it. NAR has found from surveys of consumers in America that in America today, only 23% of Americans, when they list their house, will list it with the agent who helped them buy it. Only 23% nationwide. Why? They don't stay in touch, right? Because we're known for that. Or they didn't have a good experience, or the agent's not in the business any longer. But what it means to us is that 3 out of every 4 homeowners in almost any neighborhood in America does not have an agent. They're orphans. This is perfect. By the way, we've also created a seller protection program that eliminates the chance of you ending up homeless. I'd be happy to share you information about that too. Let's use that to market. Let's talk to them. Create a campaign that highlights your seller protection program. Create a campaign that highlights that program. You might do postcards or door hangers, talk about your seller protection program. This actually has been pretty successful at getting seller leads to contact agents that we are working with simply because people are afraid of being homeless. And create a page on your website with details about that program. Drive people to your page to actually sign up or ask for more information. Use your website to generate those kinds of inquiries. And here's an idea that we really like, the power weekend. So you have a situation where you know the house is going to sell. How can you set that up to get more business off of that listing that you're really only going to have on the market for 3 or 4 days? Does that present a problem to generate more business? Let's talk about how we might do that. Live in the MLS, showings start on Saturday. All offers are due. And your open house is from 10 to 4 on Saturday and 10 to 4 on Sunday. Now, if your showings start at 10 o'clock on Saturday, your open house starts at 10 o'clock on Saturday, what is that house going to be like on Saturday? Is it going to be chaos? That's exactly how we use this to generate more interest. Door knock the neighbors and invite them to the open house. Now, when they show up to see the open house and there's a zillion people going in and out, what do they think about your marketing plan? They think it's amazing. So you're going to create this circus environment that people see all of this activity, and then it's sold which day? Tuesday. What are you saying to the neighbors? I know how to sell houses. What if you did a follow-up campaign with one of the postcard mailing things, under contract in 3 days, sold in 7 days, whatever that is, and reinforce that neighborhood? Are you building a brand within that neighborhood that you really can sell properties quickly? Use a sign-up sheet in the open house or the Open Home Pro app. Open Home Pro app. Anybody working with any of these electronic open house sign-up sheets? Great little programs. Have a book or a tablet with all the other available homes close by, along with all the ones that are recent sales or under contracts. So when your sellers come in, your neighbors come in, and they want to talk about a property around the corner, just say, it's over here on my tablet. It's over here in this book. Let's go look it up. Let's take a look at that property. Let's start that conversation about the other activity that's happened in the neighborhood. Here's another idea. Create a slideshow on your laptop of recent market data. Now imagine doing this. You have a PowerPoint slideshow. You put one piece of data on each slide. So the average sales price in Shady Acres last month, $217. Same area last year, $187. The days on market was this. Days on market last year was this. The absorption rate, the absorption rate. So you create a PowerPoint slideshow. Maybe it's 10 or 15 slides. And the way you set it up to play is that it will auto-advance and loop. So when you put it up where people can see it in your open house and you turn it on, you never have to touch it again. It just continues to loop and go from slide to slide. And what we'll do is attract attention. And when someone asks you, what is all that? You say, well, that's all the market data that I do in the neighborhood and the other neighborhoods close by. If you'd like, I'd be happy to send you the slides for free. Would you like that? In order to get the slides, what do they have to give you? Email? Name? Phone number? This is their stuff. We're in the business of getting other people's stuff. Would you agree? You know what else NAR tells us about open houses? This is amazing. Absolutely amazing. 57% of all the people who come into an open house are sellers. 6 out of 10. And yet most of us think they're nosy neighbors. We blow them off. What if you use the open house to really talk to sellers? Imagine them coming into the circus environment. You've got data that they've never seen. You've got a marketing plan that's generating this kind of circus, and they're thinking about selling their house, and they don't have an agent. Powerful? And the listing sells right away. And then you also have the market report or your special report on sellers. Special report for sellers, how to sell a house in a seller's market. Do the same sort of thing that you did for the buy side, but create a special report that you can use to market. Now, there's another way you can capitalize on your open house. Here's how it works. Have the seller invite guests to an open house Friday night before your open house on Saturday. Now, think about this. This is as good as the house will look. Is that true? The open house is the next day. You invite people to come into like a cocktail party. The seller invites the guests. Who do they invite? all their friends and neighbors. You bring the wine and cheese and just have a conversation. So could you ask for a better environment where you're in front of a lot of prospective sellers who are drinking? Is that as good as it gets? And then can we use garage sales to actually prospect for properties? Well, it's a pre-move activity. Wear your realtor pin, right? Are you moving? It's a good question. You might want to buy something, but don't negotiate. Just give them the quarter. Right? And if they do say they're going to move, then maybe you can ask this question. Would it be okay with you if I applied for the job? Is that a good way to ask for a listing appointment? Would it be all right with you if I applied for the job? And then one more idea I want to give you, automotive marketing. I think this is a tremendous way to really build your brand awareness in the neighborhood. If you guys are serious about your business, this is extraordinarily successful and powerful. It really creates awareness about you as a professional realtor. It has another aspect, another benefit. It will improve your skills as a driver. It will make you a better driver. No, it really will. If you cut somebody off and your phone rings, it's not a lead. So are we dealing with changes in a seller's market? I really think we are. So what ideas do we need to work with? There are opportunities. There are opportunities, but we have to think differently, and we have to act differently, and we have to work with new ideas. We really do. We can't do things the way that we did them before. If you remember going into the down market, it was the same idea. We had to learn new skills and work differently to do that. And we have to build new skills. We really do. And we have to have the right attitude. And that's how you thrive in a seller's market. Well, thank you guys for being here today.